I spent 30 years believing I was the unwanted kid in a charity household, scrubbing floors on Christmas morning while my so-called siblings ripped open gifts I wasn't allowed to touch. I thought that was my story, being invisible, being the reminder of someone else's good deeds. But at Vernon Harrington's funeral, as I stood alone in the back like the family shame I'd always been, a stranger in a charcoal suit approached with trembling hands and decades-old documents. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Danny Wallace?" he asked. Then he whispered the truth that shattered everything. "No. Your name is Owen Carlisle." Before I tell you my complete story, please like this video so more people can find it, comment where you are watching from so I know how far the story travels, and subscribe because you won't want to miss what happens next. For 35 years, the name Danny Wallace fit me like an old jacket, worn, familiar, and full of holes I simply ignored. I never questioned why the Harringtons treated me like I was temporary. I never wondered why there were no baby pictures of me on the walls, no stories of when I'd first walked or talked, no memories shared over dinner like families did on TV. I figured I just didn't deserve those things. When you grow up on a ranch in Willowbrook, Idaho, population barely cracking 500, you learn to keep your head down and your mouth shut. Especially when you live with people like Vernon and Ellen Harrington. Maple Ridge Ranch sat on 400 acres of rolling pasture and red barns, the kind that postcard photographers swoon over. People in town praised the Harringtons like saints. Vernon served on the livestock board, shook hands at every church potluck, and gave loud, proud speeches about hard work. Ellen organized bake sales, ran the books of the ranch with ruthless precision, and hosted the church ladies with the smile of a woman who lived for admiration. Everyone believed they'd taken me in out of kindness. Christian charity, they called it. And the Harringtons loved that word, charity. It made them look noble, generous, godly. But charity never felt like love. Charity felt like labor. From the moment I could walk, I was put to work. At 4 years old, I collected eggs from the chicken coop. At 6, I hauled water buckets and swept barns. By 8, I was feeding cattle before sunrise and dragging hay bales across frozen ground with hands so numb I couldn't feel the rope burns. At 10, Vernon had me repairing fences he intentionally left broken, muttering something about free labor being the only good labor. By 12, I could rebuild an old John Deere engine. By 15, I was responsible for maintaining every truck, tractor, and ATV on the property while Tyler and Maddie, the Harrington kids, spent their summers at soccer camp and theater workshops. Breakfast at the Harrington house was a hierarchy more rigid than military protocol. Vernon got eggs, bacon, and pancakes. Ellen got her black coffee and 2 pieces of whole wheat toast. Tyler and Maddie got whatever sugary cereal or warm waffles they demanded. Then finally, if there were scraps, they'd get slid toward me with a flick of Ellen's wrist. "Danny learns responsibility better on an empty stomach," she'd say with a smile that fooled everyone but me. On the days there was nothing left, I'd grab peanut butter from the jar I hid under my bed and pretend it was enough. School wasn't much different. When you show up smelling faintly of manure because the ranch chores never stop, kids notice. Teachers try to be kind, but kindness doesn't fill a lunch tray or give you normal childhood memories. Tyler, big, blonde, and always surrounded by football buddies, pretended he didn't know me. Maddie made a show of stepping away from me in the hallway, whispering to her friends, "He's basically the help." I heard it all. I learned not to respond. Christmas was always the worst. Every year, I'd scrub floors while they opened gifts I'd known about for weeks because I was the one who carried them in from the truck and wrapped them. Matching bikes. Tablets. Concert tickets. Designer clothes. And me? I'd get work boots. Or a thrift store coat. Always accompanied by Ellen's graceful, performative smile when the church ladies were around. We treat him like one of our own. After they left, the smile dropped. "Back to chores," she'd say. Holiday or not. I lived in a room off the garage, originally a storage closet with a single tiny window facing the tool shed. No closet, no heater, no decorations. In winter, the cold cut through the walls like a knife, and I'd sleep in my jacket just to keep my teeth from chattering. Tyler's room had LED lights and a TV. Maddie had a canopy bed and pink wallpaper. I told myself I didn't need those things. That some kids just drew the short straw. That I should be grateful. By 18, I'd saved $1,950, cash Vernon paid me under the table for extra work. All work was extra, but he liked pretending he was generous. I put down a deposit on a tiny apartment above Ruth's Diner in town. Ellen's goodbye was a dagger dipped in honey. "Don't come crawling back when you fail," she said. "We did our part. You're on your own now." But I didn't fail. I found a job at Benson's Hardware, where Hank Benson treated me with a level of respect that felt strange at first. "You're a hard worker," he'd say. "Someone raised you right." I never corrected him. Willowbrook had plenty of gossip but none of the truth. And then Vernon died. He had a heart attack branding cattle. Just dropped. The whole town mourned a good man gone too soon. I stood in the back row during the funeral, unwanted as ever. That's when the man in the charcoal suit, Harold Finch, found me. He watched me like someone seeing proof of a miracle and a tragedy at the same time. Danny Wallace? Yeah, I said. He shook his head. No. Your name is Owen Carlyle. He showed me documents. Newspaper clippings. A photo of a missing 5-year-old boy from Harborview Park in Seaport, Massachusetts, me. A reward of $93 million posted by the family, my family. My real parents, Robert and Lillian Carlyle, founders of Carlyle Innovations, a tech empire worth more than I could comprehend. Harold's voice cracked as he told me that for 30 years, my mother had kept my bedroom exactly the same, waiting. Hoping. Singing a lullaby to an empty bed. And that Vernon and Ellen hadn't adopted me. They had stolen me. Every cruelty suddenly made sense. Every cold glare. Every time I was told I should be grateful. Every chore. Every winter night in the storage room. Every moment I believed I was unwanted. I wasn't unwanted. I was taken. Harold Finch didn't rush me. He let me stand there in the empty chapel with my lungs refusing to work, my heart thudding like it wanted out of my chest. The funeral crowd had drifted to the cemetery, but I stayed rooted to the stained carpet. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I mattered, not as a chore boy, not as an obligation, not as a warning of what happens when you're born unwanted. He looked at me like I was a miracle he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch. Who are you? I finally forced out. My name's Harold, he said gently. I'm a private investigator. I've been looking for you for 28 years. 28 years. Longer than I'd been old enough to remember anything clearly. Longer than the Harringtons let me believe I was worth anything. My throat tightened. You're mistaken, I said weakly. I'm adopted. Vernon and Ellen, they took me in. Harold's jaw clenched. No, they didn't. He opened the folder in his hands and slid out a set of documents so worn their edges looked chewed. Birth certificate. Hospital photo. Police report. Newspaper clippings. A missing child flyer with a face that was undeniably mine, only smaller and brighter and unscarred by chores and hunger and the quiet ache of being unwanted. My knees nearly buckled. I stared at that child, me, and wanted to reach through time to warn him. Harold pointed to the date. January 7, 1994. You vanished from Harborview Park in Seaport while playing near the carousel. I've never been to Seaport, I whispered. Yes, you have, he said softly. You lived there for the first 5 years of your life. A hollow ringing filled my ears, like someone had struck a bell beside my skull. I don't remember. You were young. Trauma does that. His voice broke slightly. Your parents, your real parents, never gave up. They hired me 15 years ago after the FBI reached a dead end. Your mother mortgaged everything to keep searching. Your father, he died 3 years ago. His last words were, "Don't stop looking for my boy." Something inside me cracked, something old and dust-covered. I had imagined a mother only once or twice in my childhood, never clearly, always clinging to the lies Ellen fed me. Your real mother didn't want you. You were abandoned because she couldn't handle you. Be grateful we took you in. The Harrington version of my life had been built so tightly that I never questioned its shape. But now the shape was wrong. Now the truth was spilling out, heavy and bright. Harold handed me a recent photograph. A woman in her 60s stood in front of a glass building with the name Carlyle Innovations etched into the facade. Her hair was silver, her posture elegant, but her eyes, those vivid green eyes, were the same ones I saw in my own reflection every morning. That's your mother, he said quietly. Lillian Carlyle. My breath hitched. She's alive. But she's struggling. The doctors say hope is the only thing keeping her going. If she knew you were alive. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I felt like I was split in half. One part of me wanted to scream at the Harringtons for every lie they'd told. Another part wanted to collapse into Harold's arms and ask him to take me to Lillian that second. Another part didn't know who I was anymore. A voice cut through my spinning thoughts. Danny? Ellen Harrington stood at the chapel entrance, framed by the fading sun behind her. She looked smaller than she had at any point in my life, like the wind could topple her. But her eyes were sharp. Calculating. Afraid. She'd never looked afraid before. Who's this? She asked slowly. Harold closed the folder and stepped in front of me as if shielding me. Just an old friend. Ellen's gaze darted between us. She clutched her handbag like it held her last defense. You shouldn't be talking to people you don't know, Danny, she said, voice tight. Especially not today. It's a family day. Family. The word curdled in my stomach. But she kept talking. Let's go home, Ellen said, too sweet, too eager. We can talk about your future. There are some papers of Vernon's I want to show you. Adoption papers. My pulse hammered. Harold's jaw twitched. She knew something was wrong. Harold gave me the smallest shake of his head, a warning. Not yet. Not here. I'll come by later, I said, keeping my voice even. Ellen stared at me for a long, tense moment, then nodded stiffly and walked away. Her steps were quick, her shoulders rigid. She wasn't grieving a husband. She was panicking. When she was gone, Harold exhaled. We need to get DNA. It's the only piece we're missing. Once that's in place, the FBI moves. He handed me a small burner phone. Use this. Don't confront her. Act normal. Text me if anything feels off. Everything felt off. We walked out into the parking lot as the sun dipped behind the pines. The crisp air tasted like a new life I wasn't ready for yet. Harold leaned close. You've survived 30 years of hell, he said. Just a little longer. I didn't answer because I didn't trust my voice. All I could think of was the little boy in the flyer, me, and the life he was supposed to have. A warm home. A mother who would have kissed his forehead. A father who would have taught him to ride a bike instead of teaching him that silence was safer than hope. As I climbed into my old pickup, the burner phone heavy in my pocket, the world felt unreal. Too big. Too full of truths I hadn't known existed that morning. My entire life, everything I believed about who I was, had been wrong. And the people who built those lies were about to face the truth. The next few days felt like walking across thin ice, every step normal on the surface, cracking underneath. Harold told me to keep my routine exactly the same, and that was the hardest part. How do you pretend everything is fine when your entire life has been exposed as a lie? How do you talk to the woman who kidnapped you without staring at her hands and wondering how many times those fingers signed forged papers? But I did it. Because Harold said to wait. Because the FBI needed irrefutable proof. Because Lillian Carlisle deserved accuracy, not assumptions. Ruth's diner smelled like bacon grease and old coffee the morning after the funeral, just like always. Ruth herself, broad-shouldered and warm as sunrise, slapped a plate of hash browns in front of me. Rough day yesterday? She asked gently. I nodded, because that was the truth. Just not the part she expected. She patted my shoulder. You're a good kid, Danny. Vernon's death might mean you get some peace now. Peace. The word didn't land the way she meant. Peace wasn't what I felt. What I felt was suspended. Like the truth was a weight hovering just above my head, waiting to drop. I clocked into Benson's Hardware at 8 sharp. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I stocked shelves, just like any other Monday. Customers chatted about the weather. Hank Benson gave me that knowing look, the kind he used when he sensed I carried more on my shoulders than I let on. You all right, son? He asked. Just tired, I answered. He nodded, satisfied, and walked off. It was strange, not lying, not really. I was tired. Just not from the things he imagined. Around lunchtime, everything shifted. Ellen Harrington walked into the hardware store. Ellen had never stepped foot in Benson's unless she needed something specific. She hated the smell. Hated the dust. Hated the way people lingered over price tags like they didn't understand money. Today she walked in wearing black slacks and a too-crisp blouse, the kind of outfit people wear when they want control. Her eyes scanned the aisles before landing on me. Oh, she said softly, there you are. Something about her tone made my stomach twist. Too calm. Too gentle. Too much like bait. Can we talk? She asked. I forced a tight smile. I'm working. This won't take long. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I've been thinking about you. About your future now that Vernon is gone. I found some old papers in his desk. Adoption papers. Birth records. I think we should go over them together. Before they get misplaced. There it was. The threat. She didn't say it outright, but she didn't need to. She knew something was happening. And she knew those documents, fake or not, were her last line of defense. I swallowed. I'm busy tonight. Her expression hardened, cold, sharp, familiar. Don't make this difficult, Danny. I'm trying to help you. Help. If she ever said a more poisonous word, I couldn't remember it. I turned away, pretending to straighten a row of paint cans, and she eventually left. But her eyes stayed on me the entire walk to the door, like an animal sensing the trap closing. The moment she was gone, I pulled the burner phone from my pocket and texted Harold. She knows. He responded within seconds. Stay calm. Meet tonight. Seaview Motel. Same room. When I arrived, Harold already had papers spread across the motel bed, birth records, financial documents, my missing person file, photos, timelines. He looked more serious than I'd ever seen him. She's moving faster than I expected, he said. We don't have 3 days. What do you mean? He held up an envelope. DNA came back early. My hands trembled before I even touched it. 99.97% match, he said quietly. You're Owen Carlyle. The room spun, not violently, but like shifting tectonic plates. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed. The numbers blurred before my eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stared, because 30 years of lies don't unravel with dramatic collapse. They unravel silently, one invisible thread at a time. Harold sat beside me. The FBI is coming at dawn. Dawn. The end of Danny Wallace. The end of the Harrington story. There's something else, Harold added softly. Your mother wants to speak to you. My chest tightened. Now? If you're ready. I wasn't. But I nodded. Harold dialed a number and handed me the phone. Her voice floated through the speaker like fragile glass. Owen, she whispered. I closed my eyes. I don't know how to answer that, I said honestly. I've been someone else for so long. It's okay, she said immediately, breath hitching. You don't have to know anything right now. I just needed to hear your voice. Needed to know you're alive. Are you safe? Safe. I'd never considered the word before. I'd always considered survival. Yes, I said. I'm safe. A shaky sob came through the line. Every day for 30 years, she whispered, I prayed you were alive. Every birthday, I baked a cake. Every Christmas, I wrapped gifts. Every night I left your light on. I kept your room exactly the same. I never stopped looking, Owen. Not for 1 second. Those words did more damage than all the years of neglect combined. Because they weren't lies. They weren't manipulation. They were the truth I'd been robbed of. I don't remember you, I said, voice cracking. I know, she said gently. But you will. Memories come back when they feel safe to. She didn't beg me to come home. Didn't smother me with guilt or demand answers. She simply said, we'll take this one step at a time. I love you. That's all we need right now. When I handed the phone back to Harold, I wasn't the same person who'd walked into the motel. He squeezed my shoulder. Tomorrow we bring the truth to light. I left the Seaview Motel with a new weight, not of fear, but of worth. Something I'd never carried before. Back at my apartment, sleep didn't come. I stared at the ceiling, thinking of Red Rain boots and Mockingbird songs I almost remembered. Thinking of Vernon's hands grabbing me. Thinking of Ellen burning papers. Thinking of a woman across the country who kept a bedroom waiting for a child who never came home. At 5 a.m., I heard the rumble. Black SUVs. Headlights cutting through the darkness. Engines humming with purpose. The FBI had arrived. The sun hadn't even risen when the FBI caravaned into Copper Ridge. Their black SUVs rolled through town like a silent storm, unavoidable, unstoppable, unmistakably here for something bigger than a ranching family's secrets. I watched from my apartment window above the diner, barely breathing as agents stepped out, bulletproof vests reflecting the dawn's first light. People would wake soon. They'd peek through curtains, call neighbors, whisper in group chats. Copper Ridge lived on gossip, but no rumor prepared them for this. Harold pulled up minutes later in an unmarked sedan. He didn't honk. He didn't wave. He simply nodded toward the passenger seat. It was time. The ride to the Harrington Ranch was quiet except for the pounding of my pulse. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Harold placed a steady hand on my shoulder. You're doing the right thing, he murmured. But it didn't feel heroic. It felt like betrayal. Not of the Harringtons, they deserved nothing from me. It felt like betraying the version of myself who believed this place was all he'd ever get. A boy who scraped floors and prayed for scraps and accepted that love wasn't meant for him. The ranch looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I finally saw it for what it was, a prison disguised as a home. Agents surrounded the property, positioning themselves with calculated precision. One team approached the front door. Another moved toward the barn. A third covered the back entry. Harold and I stayed back, watching from a distance. Ellen answered the door in a bathrobe, clutching a mug of coffee like it was armor. She blinked in surprise as the agents flashed their badges. Mrs. Harrington, the lead agent said, we have a warrant to search your property. What? For what? She demanded, voice pitched with indignation. But there was something else beneath the surface, fear. Raw and sharp. This is ridiculous, she insisted. My husband just died. How dare you come here? The agent cut her off. We also have questions regarding the kidnapping of a minor in 1994. Ellen froze. Her mug slipped from her grasp and shattered on the wooden porch. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. But her eyes darted toward the office inside the house, the same place she claimed to have found old adoption papers. Agents noticed. They always noticed. Within minutes, Ellen was escorted to a government SUV, protesting every step. Where's Danny? Where is he? He needs to hear my side. He's confused. He's being manipulated. Harold stepped forward just long enough for her to see him standing beside me. Her face changed. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't grief. It was the expression of someone watching her entire world collapse. "Danny," she gasped. "Please, tell them. Tell them we saved you. Tell them we were your family." Family. The word felt like poison on my skin. I didn't move toward her. Didn't speak. Didn't offer comfort. I just looked at her, the woman who had denied me warmth, denied me love, denied me identity, and whispered, barely loud enough for her to hear. "You stole me." She flinched like I'd struck her. They put her in the SUV, hands cuffed behind her back. She didn't yell this time. She just stared at me with hollow eyes, like she finally understood that the story she'd controlled for decades was ending without her consent. Colin arrived 10 minutes later, skidding into the driveway in his pickup. His hair was a mess, his shirt half-buttoned, panic etched across his face. He pushed past the agents until Harold blocked him. "What's going on?" Colin demanded. "What happened? Where's Mom?" Harold spoke calmly. "Your mother has been taken in for questioning regarding a federal investigation." "That doesn't make sense," Colin snapped. "Mom didn't do anything wrong. She raised us. She raised Danny." Raised. Past tense. Harold didn't flinch. "She will have the opportunity to explain." Then Colin turned to me. His eyes were wild, frantic. "Danny, you know this isn't true, right? She's tough, yeah, but she loved you. You were part of our family." Something inside me twisted, pity or sorrow, I wasn't sure. Colin wasn't innocent. He'd benefited from my suffering. But he'd also been a child, shaped by lies just as much as I had been. "Colin," I said quietly, "your parents kidnapped me. They took everything from me, my name, my family, my life." He stared, shaking his head. No, they found you. They saved you." I met his eyes, letting every piece of truth settle between us. "They stole me." He backed away like the words were physical blows. He didn't try to argue again. Didn't try to claim innocence. He just stood there, watching his childhood shatter. That's when the lead agent approached Harold and me. "We found something," she said grimly. Inside the office, agents had uncovered a locked metal file box hidden beneath floorboards, rusty hinges, combination lock, dust thick enough to be decades old. They'd cracked it open. Inside were fake adoption papers. Burned edges of what looked like original documents. Photos of me from ages 6 to 10, taken secretly. Receipts for untraceable cash withdrawals. And a notarized letter Vernon had written but never delivered. The letter wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to a man named Sheriff Clayton Reeves, Ellen's cousin. The same sheriff who had conveniently retired shortly after I arrived in Copper Ridge. The letter detailed the fabricated story they put together, step by step. Every lie I'd been fed. Every measure taken to hide who I really was. Every fear Vernon had that the boy from Seaport would one day remember too much. My hands shook as I held the letter. "Why keep this?" I asked Harold. "Some criminals keep trophies," he said. "Some keep insurance." Vernon kept guilt. Agents radioed back and forth, coordinating evidence collection. The ranch, built on stolen money, stolen labor, stolen identity, was being seized. It wouldn't belong to the Harringtons anymore. It never had. "You need to get to the station," Harold told me. Ellen's, interrogation is starting." The station buzzed with energy when we arrived. Agents typed reports. Phones rang nonstop. What had been a sleepy rural sheriff's office now felt like the nerve center of something enormous. A one-way mirror separated me from the interrogation room. Ellen sat inside, hands cuffed, face pale, eyes sunken. She looked decades older than she had yesterday. Agent Reyes laid photos on the table. "These are Owen Carlisle's childhood items. Recognize them?" Ellen stared at the red rain boots, the same ones in my earliest, foggy memories, and tears welled in her eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. "Yes, you did," Reyes replied. 30 years is not an accident." She covered her face with shaking hands. "Vernon said no one would ever find out. He said the boy, Owen, he'd forget. And he did." She looked up, defeated. "But he was never supposed to be found." She didn't deny it. She didn't blame someone else. She finally told the truth. And as I stood behind the glass, watching her unravel, I understood something vital. Justice didn't look like revenge. It looked like truth finally being stronger than lies. Ellen Harrington's confession didn't end with words. Once the dam broke, 30 years of secrets poured out in a trembling cascade, every lie they'd told the town, every forged document, every fear-filled night wondering when the FBI would knock on their door. But as Agent Reyes questioned her, I realized something unexpected. She never once apologized to me. She apologized for getting caught. She apologized for Vernon's mistakes. She apologized for the stress of hiding the truth for so many years. But never for stealing my life. Harold placed a hand on my shoulder. This is enough to move forward. You're free. Free. I didn't even know what that word meant yet. For 30 years, freedom meant a night without chores. A day without Vernon yelling. A weekend where bruises healed quietly. Now it meant something bigger, something heavier. I wasn't just free from the Harringtons, I was free to become someone new. Or rather, someone I always was before they took me. By noon, the entire town buzzed with the news. Copper Ridge wasn't a place where secrets survived long, and this one was too big to stay contained. People who had ignored me for decades now stared openly. Some whispered apologies. Some stood in stunned silence. Some looked at me with pity. But pity wasn't something I needed anymore. I wasn't the boy they'd watched scrub floors. I wasn't the ghost who sat in the back pew. I wasn't poor Dennis who never belonged. I was Owen Carlyle. And the world was suddenly bigger. Harold drove me to the regional airport just as the sun dipped low, painting the horizon gold. She's already here, he said. Your mother insisted. My stomach twisted itself into knots. I wasn't ready, not because I feared her, but because I feared disappointing her. What if I didn't belong in her world? What if she saw the scars Vernon left on me, every invisible bruise, every instinct to flinch, and realized I wasn't the child she'd lost? But as the plane door opened and she stepped onto the tarmac, all of those fears evaporated. Lillian Carlyle looked at me like she'd found the sun after 30 years of darkness. Her steps were shaky at first, then quicker, desperate, unstoppable. Owen, she whispered, as if the name itself might vanish if spoken too loudly. She cupped my face in trembling hands, her thumbs brushing against skin worn by a life I was never supposed to live. My beautiful boy, she cried. You're alive. You're really alive. I didn't know how to hug a mother. I didn't know where to put my arms or how tightly to hold on. But she wrapped me in warmth, in grief, in relief so powerful it shook her entire body. And for the first time in my life, I felt something close to home. She pulled back, studying my face. You look just like your father when he was young. Same jaw. Same quiet eyes. But those green eyes, she touched beneath mine, those are mine. Her smile quivered. Do you remember anything? Anything at all? Red boots, I whispered. And a song. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Mockingbird, she said. I sang it every night. Every single night, even after you were gone. She held my hand like she was afraid letting go would make me disappear again. We'll take this slowly, she promised. One step at a time. You don't have to be ready for everything. You just have to be here. That night, she insisted we stay in a hotel nearby, neutral ground, not overwhelming, not too familiar. She ordered room service and watched me eat like she'd been starving for the sight. Every time I lifted my fork, her eyes softened like a prayer had been answered. This doesn't feel real, I told her. I know, she whispered. But it is. Over the next few days, the FBI finalized the charges. Ellen was officially indicted for kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud, and child abuse. The Harrington ranch was seized. Colin and Brittany were questioned relentlessly, Brittany sobbing through most of hers, Colin silent and drained. Before I left Montana, Colin asked to see me. He stood outside my apartment, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders slumped. He didn't look like the golden child anymore. He looked like a man suddenly realizing his entire childhood was a comfortable lie built on someone else's suffering. I need to tell you something, he said. I waited. When we were kids. I heard them arguing. Mom said something about keeping the boy quiet. Dad told her never to let you out of her sight. I didn't understand, but I should have. I should have said something. Why didn't you? I asked. His eyes dropped to the gravel. Because life was easier when you took the blame for everything. Easier when Dad yelled at you instead of me. And I let it happen. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. But it was something. I hope you do better with your life than they did with theirs, I said. It was all the forgiveness I could give. Leaving Copper Ridge was like shedding a skin I'd been trapped in too long. The air felt different, lighter, richer, hopeful. On the flight to Boston, Lillian held my hand during takeoff. You don't have to stay with me, she said softly. You can have your own place. Your own space. I just want you close enough that I can see you. Talk to you. Know you're real. When we arrived, she took me not to the Carlyle mansion, but to an apartment overlooking the Charles River. Start here, she said. Somewhere you can build your life without being overwhelmed. Her thoughtfulness undid me more than any grand gesture could. Buried beneath the trauma and the years of lies, something inside me began to thaw. I enrolled in trauma therapy with a specialist Lillian hired, not because she had money, but because she had hope. You survived something unimaginable, the therapist said during our first session. We're going to help you learn that survival is not your identity. I visited my childhood bedroom next. It was exactly as she'd kept it for 30 years, books on the shelf, stuffed animals arranged neatly, red rain boots sitting together like they'd never left my feet. I touched the boots and felt a flicker of a memory, my mother laughing as I stomped in puddles, my father lifting me onto his shoulders. It wasn't much. But it was a start. In time, I met board members of Carlisle Innovations. They wanted me to take on a leadership role immediately, but I refused. I want to earn it, I told them. Lillian smiled proudly. You sound exactly like your father. Weeks passed. Then months. Slowly, I learned how to be part of a family. Slowly, I learned what it meant to be wanted. Slowly, I learned how to forgive, not the Harringtons, but myself, for ever believing I wasn't worth loving. I visited the Rayfield Ranch one last time. Weeds had overtaken the garden. Windows were boarded. The storage room where I spent cold winters sat dark and empty, just as hollow as the lies they built around me. I didn't hate it anymore. That room didn't break me. Somehow, it kept me alive. A boy named Danny survived long enough for a man named Owen to be found. And now? Every morning I wake in a life that's mine. A name that's mine. A family that's mine. The Harringtons stole 30 years. But they couldn't steal my future. Before I close this chapter, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me a long time ago. Your worth isn't defined by where you came from or what was taken from you. It's defined by what survives inside you despite everything. If this story moved you, or made you think about your own journey, please do 3 simple things. Like the video, it helps this story reach more people. Comment below, tell me what part hit you the hardest. And subscribe to the channel, there are more true stories of resilience, reunion, and redemption coming soon. Thank you for listening to how I went from stolen to found, from surviving to truly living.